preparing your data, some of the best things that you can do for your users to make the data more intuitive is to spell out within the attributes what the actual attributes are, what the field names are, not really having any sort of abbreviations. If you do have to abbreviate here in your field names, spell it out within an alias. It specifically tells your user what they can find in that field, so much easier than any sort of abbreviation. Well, they probably have to dig into the metadata to find anything more out about that. You can also create attribute indices, which will help when the user is querying against your data. Bringing back the attributes in your fields will be much quicker if there's an index performed on the field of main interest for your user. You don't want to create too many of these though, because it could bog down your server. And again, if you can convert your data up front in the web Mercator projection, which most every web application converts the data to on the fly. If it's already converted to web Mercator projection, it won't have to do that thinking during the calling of the web service. So now that you've prepared your data, you're thinking about the map that you want to publish out. So within the map, you don't want to have too many layers and overwhelming your users. And this is a good case for a map that might have too many layers for the user to really get much. And this is actually one of my services. This runs behind the scenes for our national viewer to populate all these layers. So what we have done to make it more user-friendly is to split these layers into different themed web map services. In this case, these are the navigation layers: aids to navigation, recs and obstruction, principal ports, submarine cable, shipping, fairways, lanes and zones, anchorage areas. You can see that the layers are also ordered, if I had these expanded, from points, lines, and polygons, but I also try to think about how best would they be displayed upon each other throughout those geometries. And then you can also think about creating scale dependencies on your different layers for them to appear at different points as the user zooms in. That can help the performance of your map service. Keeping with the map preparation, you want to think about how the user visualizes your data. Through good cartography, you can make your data very intuitive. There's, the typical, for any hydrographic feature, you'd probably want blue italicized serif font. That's the norm. Green equals good, red equals bad. We've used this in the DoD wind stipulations layer, where there's no restrictions on a site. It's good to go, it's green. Where you might have a lot of red tape to deal with, it's red. Somewhere that was not assessed is just a blank, empty, gray outlined area. We also have a marine mammals data set that has, this is for the sperm whale on the west coast here. This data layer was created before I came onto the project, and you can see it's a divergent color scheme, color ramp, and it goes from red to blue. Divergent color schemes are best for elevation data or temperature data where you want to highlight the extremes. It's not so good for data such as this, where the values range from a little to more. You might be better suited displaying this in a sequential data color ramp, such as so, where you have low suitability to very high suitability, and you can see it brings out, the areas where you might find that species. It's obvious, it's much more obvious where that might occur using this kind of color ramp. So you want to be smart about the colors that you choose for those, and this is for deep corals in the Gulf of Mexico. And then, of course, you also can think about your labels and your annotation. Labels drawing on the fly it take a little longer on your server. If you actually have it in an annotation feature class, it tends to draw much faster. And then within the map, you can also fill out contextual information about your data. It's kind of like the Dublin core type of information where you can fill out the description within the layer, any credits you want to give to anybody. This gets carried over into the REST service page when you publish the layer. I spell out the layer name as you would want to read it. You can also pick which field the user, when they ID the features, which field automatically comes up, and then they can click on that and find out more information within the REST batch view table after that. You can also determine which fields are actually visible to your end users by clicking them on and off here. Just be sure if you want to be interoperable with ArcGIS Online, you at least need the object ID and the shape fields turned on. If they are not turned on, it won't be able to be brought into that system. And for here, for this data set, I created scale-dependent labels, and I didn't want the user to see the display or the label field. They don't really need to know that information. That information was needed for the map to draw. But they can get that when they download their data. So within the data frame, you can also fill out another description here. I find that it gets too wordy on the REST page, so I kind of leave that out, but you can fill out more credits. And you can also specify the extent you want the map to zoom into here. By clicking on the specify extent, it opens this. When you have data that crosses the international date line, which Marine Cadastre has a fair bit amount of, if you don't specify the extent and it's brought into AGOL or any other system, it will zoom into France. Like 00 is the origin. So I set it to a data set that is just more of a national coverage, doesn't extend across the date line, and it zooms right into CONUS, which is nice. On to the map document properties, you can also fill in from the file menu, you can get to the map document properties and fill in more of the descriptive information. Found here, you could write a pretty good summary. I leave this one for the national viewer just very generic and explain that the data is for the mapping program and Marine Cadastre.gov. And the authors, and we fill in tags as well. So it's more easily found on the web.